Hello, my name is Susan Satchel, and I wrote my paper on the historical and culture implications of nuclear power. In other words, the big ball of energy is so fiery. Nuclear power is more than just the big bombs like we think of Hiroshima when it was bombing at the end of World War II. It was also dreamed up as a clean source of energy, like this is going to save our environment and help us become more greener, or so was the thought into the 60s when they started building nuclear power plants. Unfortunately, it was not as easy as it looks. um, Starting in the 70s, there was nuclear accidents, from not understanding how nuclear power actually works or how powerful it can be, and especially the Soviet Union. So they had little minor outbreaks, but it wasn't anything like um, anything on a huge level as it would come later in later decades. That being said, going to our next slide. Chernobyl was the site of the worst nuclear accident on April 22nd, April 26th in 1986, and this was due from a lack of many causes. And based on that, I looked at two literacy works. This one is Voices from Chernobyl, which was a collection of interviews or a bunch of oral tales on a nuclear accident from the victims of the radiation, from the workers, their families who had to be evacuated. And it really tells a first poignant tale about the cultural effects, historical implications. This book was published a decade after the accident in 1996, and you really can just tell by reading it how the impact it was from the Soviet Union, who didn't understand, and there was you can look at the history through these interviews on who was pulling figures at what and what was going on behind the scenes, and it's really compelling. So much and so that the author who collected all this won a Nobel Peace Prize for preserving this history, because it really tells the story more than just reading a book. It's telling us what is people thought, what they believe in, and so we get an in-depth perspective as like moral tales that have been passed down generation to generation. It's helping us to remember the people that were most affected by this. My other literacy was Midnight in Chernobyl, which is not so much interviews, but this is a source of decades of research. The author spent 15 or so more years collecting it. At the back of the book, there's an exhausting list of citations from every source you think possible. And what he did was he took all this information and he combined it. And he told this story from the beginning, from the prior to the accident to the aftermath, until what's being done now to try to contain it and to try to make it better for the future, and what the possibilities are. And it's more based on like facts and figures, but when you read it, it's like you're watching a movie. Like, it's very detail specific, and you can just tell bit by bit what was going on when this happened and what was the next thing after that. So This is more of a historical point of view, but it does, also explain about the effects on the people, what it was like for all the people who had to leave their villages and leave everything behind. And it's just very compelling. The book even has schematics of the nuclear plant and the core and where everything was, and you can look at the visuals on it and just kind of see in your mind what was going on as the accident occurred. And it has maps of all the villages and what is now the Chapol, nuclear zone, which, we're talking thousands of miles of here where people can't live because radiation is still active in the atmosphere. But it's written through a third person point of view, and so it really, it's like you're watching historical documentary. It really just provides an overall tale of everything that's happened from the accident in the 30 years such, and what they're doing now to try to better the containment. And this was a recent book that was published just last year. So it really shows the author's dedication and work and trying to help not only preserve this history too, but to teach us. And it even provides links and compares itself to other nuclear accidents, as there have been others. Notably, there was one about a decade ago in the early 2000s in Japan, and they've had to create a similar evacuation zone. So it's putting all those pieces together and showing you what humanity's doing and where we're going with some of this technology and what we really need to be watching out. So as these authors and comparing them both share incredible insights. They are teaching us lessons from using powerful forces and what the effects have this been on our environment, on our culture, and it's like science fiction, dark theme. And it's about preserving history and the effects of it on the culture, but also sharing what we need to do in the future so something like this does not happen again, and how it could potentially still affect us, because they don't know. They are trying to stop the containment, but no one really understands nuclear power and how powerful it is. When the sources I used was from the Nuclear's World Association, and that is the compelling authority on nuclear power itself or nuclear energy. And they're like, we have this plan, we're going to try to contain it, but we don't know. And Midnight Chapel ends with the quote of, more than 30 years after the catastrophe began, neither man nor machine could work in such a hostile environment. So they are just still, looking and trying to understand the powerful forces of nature. And so I think these two works really just show us the dark side of humanity, so to speak, on whether technology and human ambition meets and the effects of it and the devastation that could come from that. So thank you for listening and have a good day.